I've learnt a lot whilst making this opening. For our audience research, I had to learn and become comfortable with SurveyMonkey. On this, I learnt how to create, publish and share a survey. This is something that I'd never had to do before. Yes, I'd filled things out, but I'd never made one of my own. After that, I had to share it on my social media accounts to try and get as much data as possible. And once I had this data, I used the SurveyMonkey website to analyse it with their charts and graphs. For audience research as well, start that again. I also had to use Pearl and Dean. This is a website that I wasn't very familiar with. I'd only really seen them before films that I'd watched. And by going online and looking at similar films to ours, such as Hannah, Resident Evil, and other films, I learned how to analyse their audience demographics and manipulate their data to fit our needs. With this data, we were able to create an effective product which would suit our audiences perfectly. Then of course we have YouTube. With YouTube I had to learn how to upload and annotate a video. I'd been able to do this before in the past, but I had a new understanding of it because of how YouTube has changed and adapted. It was interesting to learn how to annotate a live video and to realise that they had video uploading schedules which I'd never used before. This was extremely interesting for me. For the treatment and evaluation questions, I became very confident with Prezi. This is something again I hadn't used before, but I used it to create professional and effective presentations. I learned how to make one and create a flow path, as well as adding in text and images. This is something that I'd done on PowerPoint, but I'd never taken online and looked at Prezi. I also had to learn how to embed it onto my blog. Embedding is something that I was taught years ago, but I'd completely forgotten about. So whilst working on Blogger, which is something I'd never done before as well, I learned how to embed YouTube videos, Prezis, and other images. With this, it became a very useful skill. You can upload and when you want to embed something on Blogger, what you do is you go into the HTML section when you're creating a blog, and you just copy the embedding link from either your YouTube, Prezi, or SlideShare account. Then in the actual filming process, we used a Canon DSLR and lens. This lens allowed us to do manual focusing, so I learnt how to do focus pull, which was very interesting when it came to the spotters and those shots, which can be found on our actual piece. I also learnt how to manually set the exposure and work comfortably with all the different settings on the camera. I'd never used this camera before, and it's something that I will definitely take on board and use in all my other media pieces. We also used a tripod so we could get steady pans and tilts, as well as good, stable, wide shots. Then when it came to post-production, we used Final Cut Pro as our editing. This editing software was something, I'd used iMovie before, and Final Cut Pro is industry standard. So I learned how to change the whole tone of the piece by colour mixing. This I did by changing the exposure down to -32%. We also created titles by using the titles available on the software. We then took these titles, put them into capitals, changed the tracking to 20.83%, and then we put a red line on it with a width of 3.0. I learnt how to detach audio and add non-diegetic music. I learnt how to detach audio and create non-diegetic music. This is something that really stepped up our piece and added a much better tone to it than anything I could have done in iMovie. I am extremely grateful for the use of Final Cut Pro. All the time that I spent editing has given me a renewed respect for all the editors in the film industry. It truly is where you can change and manipulate what you've already filmed to create your final piece and change the tone to suit your needs. This concludes evaluation question number 6.